Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody around the world watching the Boom Broadcasting. After taking a hard week off after appearing on the nightcap last Friday evening with my good friend Mouthing Off with Mike, your boy is back for some WOD on a Saturday morning, back in that 10 a.m. slot that I love to be on. We got a lot to cover because so much has happened over the past 2 weeks in the world of wrestling that I can't wait to talk about. There's a bill right here on North Carolina, on the North Carolina General Assembly floor called the Ric Flair bill that we're going to discuss right here on WOD. Main Event Jey Uso is not in the main event. So now is he semi-main event Jey Uso? We're going to talk about that right here on WOD. And also we're going to talk about everything else going on in the world of wrestling because my favorite show is back on. And for the past 2 weeks, it's just dropped a banger after banger episode on Vice TV, Dark Side of the Ring. It's WOD. It's Saturday morning. Your boy is back, and I'm glad to be a part of your Saturday. You're watching WOD on the Boom Broadcasting. Let's go. Hello, friends and fans right here watching Boom Broadcast. As we stated in the opening, whether you're watching in the morning, the AM, whether it's not Saturday and you are in Japan somewhere and it's Sunday and you're watching WOD, thank you. That's right, you for tuning in. But I am so excited about my great state that I get to call home, North Carolina, enacting what we call the Ric Flair Senate bill that is on the General Assembly's list of bills to propose a Hall of Fame dedicated to not wrestling, but as all us Carolinas say, wrestling, a WRASSLIN, wrestling that started at the Great Dorton Arena and now having a Hall of Fame paraphernalia place where we can go and then be enshrined with this right here. North Carolina, to the senators and the House of Representatives, thank you so much. This committee right now will be started. The bill has not been passed. It's going through the preliminary phases right now, but fingers crossed that this will happen because there is no Hall of Fame that you can go to. WWE has a Hall of Fame, but they don't have a building. There's other Hall of Fame places where you could go to Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania or go to Philadelphia to the arena and see the banners of people that made the Hall of Fame from the ECW days placed up in the rafters. But there is no official place of a Hall of Fame that I can recall besides right here in the Carolinas, the Andre the Giant Memorial building where they have a lot of paraphernalia. If you're not for sure, Andre the Giant did spend his last days in Western North Carolina up there in the mountaintop, and they engraved a shrine of Andre the Giant paraphernalia memorial stuff from his house he had up in Western Carolina to showcase. But that's just for Andre. But we do not have a Hall of Fame place, whether it's New York City, Las Vegas, in Orlando. You know, WWE has the place in Stanford. That's the warehouse that houses the Hell in the Cell, houses all the stuff they take on the WrestleMania week that they put out, the Undertaker's outfit, the Rock's shades, the Smoking Skull belt, the Booker T. King Booker setup. They got all of that stuff, but it's not a Hall of Fame. It's just a warehouse storing stuff. But right here in the Carolinas, we are this close to having a Hall of Fame place enshrined probably in the capital city, Raleigh, because 9 out of 10, the North Carolina Department of Arts will be overseeing this. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I serve on 2 boards for North Carolina. If this happens, I'm volunteering. I'm putting my hand up. Pick me, coach. Put me in the game, coach. let me serve on the advisory committee for this because this would be the ultimate honor. As we know, so many greats have passed through the Carolinas during Jim Crockett and Mid-South NWA territory days. Jim Crockett was the last territory to sell out. They sold out to WCW, the billionaire Ted, to Ted in WCW to take that slot that he had to make WCW. Crockett was the last one to sell out, to let the territory days in. So that's why I'm so invested with the territories, because I grew up in that territory system, watching all the great tapes of the Dusty Rhodes, the Arn Andersons, the Ric Flair, the Wrigley Dragon Steamboat, the Junkyard Dog, all these greats who come from this Carolina melting pot of wrestlers. I watched on VHS at Gritty's house, sitting in front of the TV, studying wrestling. And I am just so excited that our General Assembly feels like this would be a perfect place to have the first ever home of Hall of Fame dedicated to, I was saying, the Carolina boys, wrestling. I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to it. Really hope this bill's passed because there's so much stuff you can bring here. Not only from the NWA days with Rick, Dusty, Arn Anderson, Terry Funk, all these Mick Foley, all these people who passed through, the Junkyard Dog from Waynesboro. Not only can you bring that stuff, hey, Nikhil Volkov that lived over there in Winterville, North Carolina. Not only can you enshrine all of that stuff, but think of all the greats now who are active wrestlers that have ties to the Carolinas. Andre the Giant, he's a deceased one. But you got Edge up there in Asheville, Montez Ford from Waynesboro, Edson County, Charlotte from Charlotte, North Carolina. You got my girl in the Party Rockers. I can't call her name. She's from Raleigh, went to Shaw University. So we still have a lot of people in this area that's presently wrestling in WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, and New Japan with ties to the Carolina. Cody Rhodes. Yes, he did grow up around Marietta, Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, but you better believe I got pictures of him running up to Charlotte to wrestle in tournaments with Dusty. They got pictures of that. So Cody, even though not born and raised a Carolina boy, but he is a product of the Carolina Wrestling Factory. Braun Strowman, another product of the Carolina Wrestling Factory. I'm just excited. You can hear it in my voice. I really, really hope this bill passes. The Ric Flair bill passes so that we can have a Hall of Fame dedicated to Carolina wrestling, which was the birthplace of the territories and the last territory to tap out when syndicated cable television took over and local wrestling no longer could be provided. You couldn't hear Gordon Sully no more. Jim Crockett tapped out and sold to WCW, sold his slot to Ted from TBS for WCW programming to air. I can't wait. I'm so excited. Come on, General Assembly. Let's make this happen. Stay tuned. You're watching WOD right here on the Boom Broadcasting.
Being a cowboy, well, I don't know anything different. I had a very successful career. Life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally. And then I got hurt. I dug into mental health. I wanted to be better as a person. I start my day with a workout. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
Welcome back to WOD right here on the Boom Broadcasting. If you missed that first segment, dive back into it. That's right. The Carolinas are maybe 2 steps away, 2 votes away from having a Hall of Fame dedicated to wrestling right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. We got the NASCAR Hall of Fame. We got the Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame. Why not have a Wrestling Hall of Fame? If you missed that segment, definitely dial back to the beginning of the show to catch that segment. Now, our next segment would be a segment you would hear about on It Stinks because it's a TV show. And It Stinks is a show that reviews TVs and movies. We talk about new stuff coming out, the South Park, all the new stuff coming out. But being and dealing that this show deals with wrestling, I decided to save this slot for not It Stinks, but for WOD this week. As you know, my favorite show is back on Vice TV, Dark Side of the Rings. Quick story on how I discovered Dark Side of the Rings. One night, after hanging out with the guys and having a little too many, I came home, turned on the TV, flipped channels, saw some wrestling on Vice TV, said, what is wrestling doing on Vice TV? Let's watch it. Ended up being the Dark Side of the Ring documentary. I think that one was on Bruiser Brody. I got into it, went back, binge watched the entire season 1 before the Bruiser Brody, all of season 2, all of season 3, watching it live, all of season 4 now watching live. And I'm a big fan. And I know why everybody say you watch Dark Side of the Ring, because my guy's up there, Jim Cornette. If you don't know, I'm a Cornette guy. But not only because Jim Cornette's up there, Chris Jericho does a great job. The Learning Tree does a great job hosting the show, being a narrator. You have so many great people on that show, from Al Snow to Mick Foley to Booker T. The list goes on and on. Jim Cornette. Who else been up there? So many, I can't name them all who give insight on these wrestlers that they're covering week by week's lifestyle and the ups and downs. The one with Bruce the Barber, BK, he talked about the fallout with him and the Hulkster at the end. Very good. Just a big fan of this show. Really peels back the curtains of WWE, AEW, and wrestling in general is life. We see these guys and we see these ladies. And, especially the 80s and 90s, that area that I grew up watching heavily, they live like rock stars. They party like rock stars. They live life. Wrestlers were bigger than rock stars. They were on the same plateau. Wrestling boomed in the 80s and 90s and exploded. Then when that Attitude Era came with Stone Cold, The Rock, the Hart Foundation, it blew up even more thanks to Stone Cold and The Rock. And then you had the NWO and WCW. Wrestlers were living larger than life. And this show just tells so much of everything. But this season right here, the first 2 episodes, Vice TV, you get a golfer's clap. And if you have not gone back to watch these 2 episodes, if you're a fan of it, definitely go back and watch it. But if you have never seen Dark Side of the Rings, start with season 1. Don't sell yourself short. Take a whole Saturday, take a Sunday, take off on a Friday from work, or a Friday when nobody's in the office. Throw it on the iPad, throw it on the computer screen, and let season 1 roll all the way to where we're at now. Because the documentary is just that good. They have done so many. They've done Sensational Sherry, Bruce the Barber, BK, Shawn Michaels, the Montreal Screwjob. So many. The list goes on. Bruiser Brody. The list just goes on and on and on that you can't even name all of them. But every one of them gets better and better. And I really was waiting forward to this season, because when they ran the trailer around the holidays, I caught a glimpse of one thing that caught my eye. Ludwig Borgen. And I remember Ludwig Borgen. I was like, man, I remember this guy. He was a nasty, can't cuss this week, heel on WWF TV that feuded with Luger until he just disappeared. Like, nobody knows what happened to him. He just mysteriously disappeared from WWE now, WWF, back in the 90s. And I just did never know what happened. So I was so excited to see what Ludwig's Dark Side of the Ring story was about, because I knew about the unfortunate suicide incident that he had, overdosing. I knew about that. We read about that. You heard about it. I knew about him being elected to the Finland parliament, but didn't know the backstory of it. So you heard stuff in the news about this guy. But the biggest question to me was, what happened? He was a guy they were pushing to the moon, getting over, and then he just vanished out of the viewpoint. No explanation of why he was gone. Dark Side of the Ring did so good telling the story this week on Ludwig Borgen. And I don't want to sell it short, because they kicked off last week, week 1, with Hell in the Cell, with Mick Foley reminiscing the Hell in the Cell match and how he had so much pressure on him to upstage what Michaels and the Taker did in the first Hell in the Cell match that was maybe 5 to 6 months before this match. And they did good even with that one, because Mick told a lot of stuff. And one thing about Mick Foley, you got to love the guy, man. He just gives his heart out. Hats off to Mick Foley. Even at the end, he told something that, I would not expect him to tell was that the comedy show he's doing is not for money. Mick suffers from a lot of concussions, which we know why he had to stop wrestling, a lot of brain trauma, brain damage, that they really feel like he will start to lose his memory and dementia will slip in very, very early than what it is expected to slip in due to all the bumps he's taken over the years, coming through the cage, being unconscious, finishing the match. That's why he does the comedy show. That's his way of being able to retain and keep those memories. He said, because a lot of times the fans throw stuff out there that's able to help him recall. Man, hats off to Mick. And I'm telling you, Mick, if you ever come into Carolinas with your show, your boy's going to definitely be there to support you. Because that was big right there. Very big of Mick. But that was a great show. Talked about the Hell in the Cell. Undertaker did not appear. Of course, you understand why. Undertaker's under contract still. Mick's under contract, but Mick has a little bit more freedom than the Taker right now. But they were able to attain statements that the Taker made on other documentaries. They were able to use it. So it still felt like the Taker was there, even though he wasn't presently there. So they did very good on that one. So definitely catch that one. But back to the Ludwig Borgen. Like I said, Kyle came in, pushed him to the moon, disappeared, nothing happened. And we found out what happened. First of all, Ludwig Borgen, he grew up a rough childhood. And not making an apology or such what you're about to hear from the rest of the show, but they start off with that way. And I said, well, most of the time on the shows, most of these wrestlers, they start off with a rough childhood, things going on to push them to what they're doing. Then what happened was Ludwig decided to move to California, be a bodybuilder, and guess what? He was seen working out, and they said, you ought to try wrestling. With no experience, he signs up for some mom and pop's backyard wrestling promotion in California, starts can't talk, can't wrestle, but just had pure physical ability to be able to go and get seen by the right person. Now, Jim Ross is glad that he didn't discover him because that one is not on his resume. But Ludwig ends up getting signed to WWL. And Vince really likes Ludwig. He has the look. Back in that time, remember the 90s, Vince was all for big foreign guys who could take down the American hero. Who was the American hero? Guy going in the Hall of Fame this year, Lex Luger. He needed guys that could match up to Luger to say, here's a big, nasty heel that's from a foreign country trying to take down the American. Let's start a story. That was Vince's whole plateau of wrestling back then. But they find out that Ludwig had things from his past that got him in trouble. First of all, Ludwig had things tattooed on him that resemble stuff of hate. They didn't know about it. He hid it. He hid it during his interviewing. Jim Ross, during his interview, he hid it. Jim Ross said, we did not, and we does not count me. We didn't do a good job as WWE vetting this guy and learning his background like we do now in AEW and like WWE does now. We didn't do a good job vetting him, so this guy had hate speech going on, hate stuff going on. Then the guy ended up getting, when they finally found out this was going on, in the contract, you couldn't get rid of him because there was no clause that you can't get rid of him because he had the contract so tight that if they got rid of him, then they would still have to pay him. Ludwig gets hurt. And man, WWF back then found a back door with that lawyer team to get him out of there. They got him out of there, and that's when that guy disappeared. I remember saying as a kid, what happened to Ludwig Borgen? This guy was like getting pushed to the moon. And that Tatanka come on. And Tatanka did so good. Another Carolina guy, Filmbrook, down there in Lumberton. Tatanka came on, and Tatanka said, going back at the time when we had the discussion, I was undefeated on a 2-year undefeated streak, had been on a roll. WWF back then had pushed me to the moon and got me at a good place. They needed me to take the loss, Ludwig Borgen. I felt like this would be a good start to get him over as the top heel to get the Luger. Tatanka gets pinned. I won't never forget that night. I was a kid. Man, I was sad. I used to go around and do the dance like Tatanka. I had the war chop, the little tomahawk. I had all the Tatanka stuff. I was a big Tatanka fan because, number one, the guy was from North Carolina. He was only an hour away from where I lived at. We used to go that way all the time. So whenever we went down to Lumberton, Pembroke, My biggest dream was I'm going to bump into Tatanka and, man, we're going to wrestle. He's going to teach me how to do the fall away slam, and I'm going to be a wrestler like Tatanka. Well, Tatanka ended up getting pinned with one finger for the 1, 2, 3. And he got Louis Bogan over. That got him over as the most hated heel. Then the guy gets hurt as he disappears because WWF knew that when they found out this guy was not the type of guy they wanted. He did not mesh well in the back with the boys. When they found out this guy was a pretty much pro-hate guy, hated certain type of races and religions, it didn't mesh well. And they talked about even when he went to New Japan, he got in a fight with Flash Scott Norton. I got from the NWO. Scott Norton, him got in a fight over him saying hate speech to Scott Norton. Then Louis Borg just disappears. We never hear nothing from him. We did hear back from him later on in UFC when he said, I'm going to beat this guy, and ended up losing within 30 seconds, tapped out to the guy who became a UFC Hall of Fame guy. Can't call his name right now. It'll come to me in a minute. But then his life just goes down. Dark Side of the Ring does so good, telling the downfall after that. The going through the divorce, the getting on drugs. This is the sad part. You know, this is the part you hate here on Dark Side of the Rings. Because the majority of these stories, when they start off like this, you know there's going to be a slippery slope. They got to come crashing down, getting on drugs. But going back to Finland and being received as a Finland hero because you were in Die Hard 3, you was in WWF, you was in UFC, all of this stuff made you a movie star. That knowing this guy's background, he gets hired by the most farthest political group, not hired, they joins it and got elected and had the third most votes. And nobody could believe it in the States that this guy, Jim Cornette, said, if you would have told me this guy was going to get locked up, I would have said yes. If you would have told me this guy was going to be elected to a parliament, I would have said absolutely not. Not this guy right here, this wacko that we used to deal with in the locker room with the boys. He got elected. They talked about that, and they talked about other stuff with Ludwig Borgen. Then they talked about the sad part of how things came crashing down. Yes, he got raided on. His house got raided on in California, which sent him back to Finland. And then they deported him back. He had a unmarked gun there, had a Uzi there, had drugs there. He was trafficking drugs from Russia back to the States that he was taking, a lot of pills and stuff for the bumps and stuff that he had went through and all the stuff. So all that stuff adds up. And at the end, they tell the sad story how Louis Borgen passed. But like I said, Dark Side of the Rings does so good with these things, telling these stories. The Hell in the Cell with Mick Foley, perfect, superb. The Louis Borgen story was very good to me because it was a guy I want to know what happened to him, because he was a guy that when he got to WWF, he beat Tatanka. You saw his stock just going up to the moon, and then he just disappeared right before our eyes. And kind of got to the point like, whatever happened to this guy? Till we found out he had got elected, and then found out of his sudden passing. That WWF did not report, but National News did report when I was a kid. So Dark Side of the Ring, outstanding job. If you have not had a chance to go watch it, definitely go watch all of them. You will not be disappointed. The commentary team they have, Jim Ross, Jim Cornette, Booker T, Al Snow, just everybody you can name they can bring in on every episode, does so good telling these stories and telling us things that we did not know about these wrestlers, male and female, of their lives that, you know, would go hidden. Of course, Louis Borgen wrote a book and they said it was all lies. Somebody did mention that. This is Sean. You're watching WOD. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking about main event Jey Uso. Not in the main event. Yeet.
Being your best isn't just about taking care of your body.
It's about taking care of your mind and mental health.
Find the resources you need
to make your mental health a priority.
Love your mind.
Welcome back to the show right here, WOD. As we said, we thank you for hanging in for segment 3 of today's show. We have had a great show today. If you missed segment 1 and segment 2, definitely peel back after segment 3 to go back and watch that. Segment 1, we talked about North Carolina getting ready. A bill is on the floor to have a Wrestling Hall of Fame right here in the Carolinas. So excited. Then on segment 2, we talked about arguably one of the greatest shows. This could have been on It Stinks, but due to it being dealing with wrestling and being about wrestling, we decided to talk about it on WOD. Dark Side of the Rings on Vice TV. Hell in the Cell was the first episode last week. This week's episode was the rise and fall of Ludwig Borgen, who came to WWF on a trailblaze, beat the undefeated Tatanka, put me to tears that night when I was a kid. I wanted to take my tomahawk and find Ludwig Borgen and chop him up, but I couldn't because I was so scared because he was just a big, nasty, mean SOB heel like Braun Strowman. That's what he was back then, and then he just disappeared from WWE, well, WWF back then, in a blink of an eye. And Dark Side of the Rings did a great job telling that story of Ludwig Borgen, the rise and fall of a guy who got to the top, even got elected in Finland, and suddenly did the sad thing of taking his life. Of course, if you ever think about that, please call somebody when you make that decision. Call a friend, call a crisis line, call anybody. Hey, you got to look me up, call me up, and we will help you through that, get through those dark days. You won't have to make that decision. But that's what happened with Ludwig Borgen, and they told that story of that. Great job on Dark Side of the Rings and the commentary team of telling the rise and fall of Ludwig Borgen on Dark Side of the Rings. Now time for segment 3. I've been waiting since this was announced last Friday, not the previous Friday, but the Friday before that. We talked about it on the nightcap. We kind of knew that's where it was heading, but we just needed to be official, and now it's official. He's not main event Jey Uso at WrestleMania. He's semi-main event Jey Uso, because the biggest guy in WWE right now will not main event night 1 of WrestleMania. And guess what? It's okay. There's no problem with it. Go ahead, turn the TV off, drop the comments in the box. You know, Yeet Master right here. I'm not watching this show ever again. Hear me out, everybody. Hear me out. It's okay. I like Jey. I like Jey a whole lot. Think that Jey has done something remarkable. Broke out of a tag team. Got in the bloodline. Was the sidekick to Roman Reigns in the bloodline, the right-hand man. Broke out of the bloodline. Even when he started breaking out in the bloodline, when Sammy came along, Sammy really helped get Jey going. When Jey was just this mean guy, you couldn't get to him. I don't like you, Sammy. I don't like you near my family. All this stuff. Breakout character. Even broke out of the bloodline and became bigger than Roman right now. And no disrespect to our OTC, but he's bigger than Roman with the fan base. Was able to team with Cody with all that star power. Usos, tag team, bloodline. Roman Reigns was there. Teams with Cody. You got Cody Rhodes. Broke out from the Cody Rhodes tag team to be the bigger star. Same thing he did the bloodline. To now finally getting that chance to win that Royal Rumble. And it's guaranteed when you win the Royal Rumble that you get a main event, or not main event, you get a title choice of which champion you want to fight, whether it's the undisputed champion or the world heavyweight champion. Jey did all of that, but nowhere did it say you have the main event. And that's where we get so caught up into who's main event mania. Yes, the main event mania means you are the top star. Everybody's here for that match. But Jey don't need it. He doesn't need it. Jey can open up Mania. The crowd's going to be hot, whether he opened it or he closed it. Jey does not need it. And now knowing that Jey is not main eventing, if he opens up, do you think Jey may win? You start questioning yourself now. And this is what WWE wants to do with us. So many times, us as fans, we feel like when the guy main events Mania, He's going to win the match. The confetti's going to fall down. The fireworks going to go off. The crowd's going to be going bananas wild. You're going to hear them blowing the roof off. People are going to be crying. People are going to be kissing each other, kissing babies, holding up signs saying, Jey, you did it. Cody, you did it. You finished the story. But guess what they did in WrestleMania 39? We didn't get that. Roman won. And it's okay to leave Mania with crickets, because it tells the story of the guy's comeback to get back to that spot like we got with Cody. And I've been saying since day one that the way Jay's over right now, he's not going to lose momentum. It's going to make it bigger like they saw with Cody. Everybody was crying, fussing, cussing, raising hell, as Stone Cold would say. Sorry about that, press, but that's what they were doing, because guess what? They wanted Cody to win. But when Cody came back and won in Philly, and he looked up to the stars, and he said, Dad, sorry it took so long, but I did it. That's the same thing they want with Jey Uso when he beats Gunther. Why would you want to have Jey beat Gunther right now? Gunther just lost at WrestleMania last year, the IC title to Sammy. Why would you want to have Gunther do the same thing back to back? If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But this is my show. This is my views right here of what I see. Jey doesn't need a main event, everybody. Don't be mad. It's not going to hurt main event Jey Uso. Win or lose, when he comes out of Mania, he's still going to be main event Jey Uso. But you got to remember, Jey is just a guy that's gotten over that they want to get even more star power behind. So how do you get more star power behind them? Don't let them main event. Now you get more fans invested saying, well, you got screwed, Jey Uso. And guess what? I want Jey to win. Oh, come on, Jey, win for the little man. There you go. Hey, there goes WWE picking on the little guy again. Little guy can't never get an opportunity. We want Jey. We're behind Jey. So if Jey loses, guess what? Now fans get more irate. And guess what they do? Back Jey even up more. So now when his music hits, ooh, so, and the crowd goes crazy, now they're 10 times elevated up here now. Just because of this right here. This was smart of WWE. You don't have the main event to show if you win the Rumble. Just be glad you're on the show and you get a title shot. Come on, y'all. I don't got a main event it. I won the Rumble. Just give me a title shot. Give me a chance to go out there and win a title. Whether it's the heavyweight title, the WWE title, U.S. Intercontinental. Hell, sorry, Prez, if I want to team up with the Prez and with Mike or Shannon or anybody, and guess what? Go for the tag titles. Give me that opportunity. That's what the Royal Rumble is all about. We as fans have just gotten so bamboozled with, if you win the Rumble, you're guaranteed a main event. You don't have to do it. What about the women's? The only woman we seen main event from winning the Rumble was Bianca and Mercedes Moné. I don't even think who won it last year, Rhea. And she didn't main event. I don't recall. If I'm wrong, drop that in the comment box. But if I recall, the first night of Mania, main event was Seth and Cody versus Rock and Roman. Night 2 was Roman versus Cody. So even the woman who won the women's battle Royal Rumble didn't main event. So what makes a difference for Jey not the main event? Why are we upset? There's no reason to be upset. We as fans right now in the Triple H era have to remember patience is the biggest thing with wrestling. Even myself get upset because I want things done now. I told you about Braun Breaker when he lost the first time. I wanted Braun Breaker to win the IC title so the crowd would go crazy. Braun lost. Came back it was Sammy. Sammy lost. Came back a couple weeks later, he beat Braun and the pop was even bigger. Triple H is all about building the story, building the character. Because we as fans, we call ourselves so educated because we know this thing called professional wrestling that we get caught up saying, if the guy main events, he's going over. Now, guess what we're saying? He's not main eventing. Is he going to go over? Can he beat Gunther? Are they going to take the title off Gunther? Are they going to give it to Jey and see what Jey can do? I just feel like they did perfect by pulling Jey out of this main event spot and making him the match before the main event. Or hey, make him the opening match on night 1. Make him the opening match on night 2. I always said with Jey Uso, this match should be an opening match on 1 or 2. Shouldn't be the match for the main event. Just because if Jey wins, you ain't gonna be able to get that crowd calmed down. Make it the match opening night of 1 or 2. Give Jey that 10-minute interest he's got to have to get the crowd buck wild. And if you're going to put him over, give him that 10 minutes after that to celebrate. We saw that when Eddie won, him and Chris Benoit. Chris Benoit won earlier that night. Then Eddie came back that night and won against Brock Lesnar, won the WWE title, and him and Benoit celebrated in the ring the same time. 2 guys from WCW who were now the champions of WWF, WWF back then, WWE, with the fireworks. Do that with Jey. Have Jey open up the match and win the match. And then have Jey come out. If Roman goes over Seth and CM Punk, have him come out and celebrate with Roman with the fireworks, with the belt. Or vice versa. If Jey wins opening night 2, have Jey come back and celebrate with Cody if he goes over Cena and beats Cena with the fireworks confetti. Reenact the Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero moment. To everybody, that was a good moment because even though Benoit match was 4 or 5 matches up on the card, he still had that celebrating moment to raise his hand in the air with Eddie Guerrero, with the confetti falling, with the fireworks, with the big hug, with tears coming out of everybody's eyes. They said, here's 2 guys from WCW, 2 guys who were on SmackDown. And you got to remember, back then, SmackDown was the B show because Paul Heyman used to call it the wrestling show. I used to watch SmackDown. Still a big reason why I'm a big SmackDown guy. Why do you think every time the nightcap comes on Friday night, I'm trying to get on the nightcap? I'm a SmackDown guy. I always said SmackDown is the wrestling show. Raw is the promo show. You can cut promos, go to Raw. But if you can get in the ring and you can go from bell to bell, coast to coast, post to post, as my boy Jacob Fatu says, you need to be on SmackDown. That's all you got to do with Jey. Everybody, calm down. Pump the brakes. Just pump the brakes. It's okay if Jey does not main event WrestleMania. It's all right. We still got Jey. He won the Rumble. He's still going to be main event Jey Uso. Win or lose, he's going to come out Mania. Over if he wins the belt. Moreover, if he loses, setting up the redemption story of next year of getting back to Mania. Whether it's winning the Rumble again, which I doubt they would do, or probably having to win the Elimination Chamber with the card stack that gives them the Elimination Chamber, overcoming the odds to get back to Gunther, to beat Gunther that night. 1, 2, 3. Crowd goes crazy. Cody's laid the story for everybody of how to get a guy even more over, have him lose, and bring him back next year to win it. He showed you the blueprint. That's what WWE wants to do. I hope you enjoyed this week's show right here. We had so much to talk about. The Ric Flair Hall of Fame bill in North Carolina. Getting ready to have a wrestling Hall of Fame in Carolina. Dark Side of the Ring, 2 spectacular episodes. Ludwig Borg and Hell in the Cell, Mick Foley. And also main event Jey Uso not having to be main event and still come out a winner at the end of the day. This is Sean. I'll see you next week on WOD. Ladies and gentlemen, you thought the show was over. It can't be over yet. Without announcing a big breaking news announcement right here on WOD on Boom Broadcasting. He's back. Let me get my help. Let me get my bag, my gifts, because you know what that means. What's in the bag? Rusev Day, Rusev Day, Rusev Day, Rusev Day. Rusev, formerly known as Miro in AEW, and Rusev in the WWE, has signed a contract to come back to WWE, which you can see him appear any night because in AEW, They don't do like WWE 90-day non-compete clause, so Rusev Day is officially back in WWE. One more time, Rusev Day, Rusev Day, Rusev Day, Rusev Day. Thanks for watching WOD. This is Sean. We'll see you next week.